The room is full. I know it's not because of me, but because of the topic that is so important. So let me introduce myself first. My name is Luca Iandoli. Unfortunately, I don't speak Spanish well, not at the level to give a speech, at least, so I'm not going to try that. But I understand it, so I mean, if you want to ask questions in Spanish, feel free to. Anyway, I'm Italian, by the way, but I'm based in New York, St. John's University, where I'm the Dean of the Collins College of Professional Studies. In the last year, I've done a lot of work with generative AI, primarily in the space of how we bring AI, generative AI in particular, to the classroom. How many of you are professors? Okay, so good bunch of you. And of course, you know that the struggle of this, and I don't know what your schools are doing. We are trying to help our instructors to deal with it, and so we have initiated a number of activities during this last year to like instructor training on AI, students training, and other initiatives. Specifically, this presentation is about AI, generative AI, and entrepreneurship. And in particular, I'm focusing on a particular step of the entrepreneurial process, which is really typically at the beginning, very early stage, when we have to transform ideas into products. So it could be used for teaching, but it's also, I think, usable by entrepreneurs who want to give it a try. The presentation is a little bit introductory in nature. So I apologize if for some of you who are more advanced, maybe they will find some of this repetitive. But I think that some of the fundamentals had to be covered just to make sure that everybody was on the same page. At the same time, I think there's a lot of misconception about AI, so it's good to understand a little bit better how it works. So the way I put this together is, first part, I'm going to give you an intro to AI, how it works, specifically why it could be useful for us teaching entrepreneurship. And then the second part is more of a demo / workshop. You can just listen to look at my examples on the screen, or if you have ChatGPT on your phone, on your computer, I suggest you to log in so that you can try some of this yourself. Okay, so this is the modality. So three things I want to accomplish with you tonight, this afternoon. First of all, understanding a little bit the difference when we talk about creativity, what that means for a machine, if we can talk about creativity for a machine, and what it means for human. What are some important differences that we should be mindful about? Number two, how we integrate generative AI into prototyping. And I'm going to use a design thinking framework for that. And number three is really about, and this is one of the key points for me, using AI is really about developing new workflows. So this means changing the way we work, but also structure it in a little bit in a different way than we are used to. So the workflow that I propose is a reflection on how we can have a creative workflow with AI, and at the same time reflect on the skills that we still need to have, because we cannot outsource creativity to AI, of course. Okay, so why this is important? Because a critical step for any entrepreneur, and also students in entrepreneurship, is this passage, right? We have ideas. Ideas are easy. I say ideas are cheap. Everybody can come up with an idea, right? The problem is how we transform, do we execute the idea? How do we transform the idea into a product? That's a big, big gap. And normally it's not really well covered. I think in general, there's a little bit of mystery there. There's a little bit of a black box. Things like design thinking help a little bit, so that's why I'm using this. But specifically, when it comes to AI, you know, what is that AI can help us to do in that, to cover that gap, to fill that gap? First of all, it can help us to create more variety. Variety is important because at the beginning we need to have a lot of ideas, right? It accelerates the pace of ideation. And then it can help us to articulate our value proposition in different ways. And this is another important step, not just for presentation, but for the same idea to develop and to grow. And then I want to offer you a little metaphor, and this is the way I've been using AI myself, generative AI. It's like, I like cooking. I like to cook. I like food. So I'm using the cooking metaphor here. So having a generative AI is like to have a sous chef that can help you cook better. But you're still the cook, okay? He cannot cook for you. He can help you refine your ideas. For instance, he can help you to understand what your, let's say you are a professional cook, so you have a restaurant, you have customers, what they like. You can improve that understanding of that. Create more dishes, more ideas, more innovative recipes. Refine the product concept. And that build prototypes, which is the things that you're going to test. And eventually, the good ones at least will transition to the product phase, right? And finally, especially if you use things like lean startup approaches, where it's all about validating market hypotheses, generative AI can help you to be a little bit more productive and to accelerate the process of hypothesis validation. Okay, so this is what I have on my agenda. So a little bit of an introduction, how generative AI works, a brief overview of design thinking, just in the case some of you might not be familiar, but I'm assuming that most of you are already because it's very popular. And then we go into the workshop part, which is really a prompting type of workshop, but it's a prompting that I've created specifically for the design thinking steps that you see there: empathize, ideate, prototype. I don't know if I'm going to be able to cover everything because it's a lot of stuff, but just to give you some examples and maybe have you try that out, it could be a good outcome for tonight. And then I want to leave some time at the end to discuss and have your feedback, your experience with generative AI, in case you've been trying already, and what you make of it. Let me ask just by raise of hand, how many of you have been trying to use generative AI in an entrepreneurship course already? Okay, so that's good. There's already a good number, although less than the number of people that raised their hands when I asked who was professor. So which is normal. I mean, there's always, like in adoption of new things, it's always like a process, right? And people join at different stages. All right, so how does it work? So this is just a quick primer. I like this part because maybe it's not super informative. I don't pretend to give you, this is very complex, algorithmic stuff, technical stuff. My background is in computer engineering. I've been studying this a little bit during my school time and after that. So it's complicated, but the principles are not. And I think it's important to understand the foundation because there's a little bit of a misconception that might arise if you don't know what it does, right? So what it does, you probably heard this a lot of time. I call this computing with words, okay? It's a calculator, except use words instead of numbers. So what it does, so you have a sentence like, hi Mary, thanks for an update. And then you have, what's the next word, right? On, about, or car. Clearly cannot be car, in English at least, right? So use certain models called n-gram that basically, the idea is to complete this sequence of words using probabilistic reasoning. Now, depending on how long the sentence is, this n-gram could be 3, 4, or more, right? In this example, it's very simple, just for the sake of the example. Of course, real algorithms are much more powerful, so they use much bigger sentences and sequences. So this contract will be considered void if, and then you have different words that can follow. So what you have here is what we call a context, which is what is the word that is more appropriate in the context of the sentence, right? Now, if the context is only 3 words, it's considered void if. And what the algorithm does is to compute a probability. What is the most probable likely word after that? And if you do that, you find different possibilities, right? Not is the more likely word to complete the sentence. Consider it void if not, and then you have, what's the next word? Now the context is these three, void if not, properly signed or stamped. So properly is the most likely word, and then signed is the most probably word. So you build the sentence in this way. Why I'm making this example? Because I want to debunk the myth that there's any reasoning behind this. Okay, generative AI doesn't do any reasoning, doesn't think, let alone as is sentient or as a conscience. Although, however, when you bring this to the power that we have now this example is very trivial and leaves out a number of complications. But just to give you an idea, is really a scholar was and a scientist who's a little bit critical about this AI, call it statistical parrot. Okay, for me that's correct, but it's not to be taken in the negative sense. It's good. It's good to have a statistical parrot because it's a good recombination device that can help us to come up with better ideas. So why not, right? But it looks like he's thinking, or it is thinking, or she is thinking. It depends on you if you want to humanize it or not, because it's so good. And he answered the question. The second element is that it's conversational, of course. We're going to get back to that. So what is behind this? Neural network, large language models. These things have been around for a while. And yesterday was a great session. Armando Vittieri said that, the first one was invented in 1950 something. I started when I was young, so they've been around for a while. But, they were not that powerful. Number one, the computational power was not there. The hardware was still expensive, relatively speaking. Now the hardware is cheap, the computational power is there. More importantly, the data is there. The data in the 90s when I was in school was not that abundant. I mean, the internet was just about, to go around. Now is data everywhere. And this stuff feeds on data heavily. Okay, so let's skip the details on neural network. So what is good at? Is a powerhouse of, I call it algorithmic creativity. So there's nothing like human creativity, which is based on reflection, intuition, and things like that. It's purely combinatorial. So you combine words and you come up with something that makes sense, okay? And can generate for very little time and money a large volume of content. That's what it does. It's a content generator in an automated way. It's a robot that spits out good content. Good, quote unquote. We'll see what good means. And one thing that is not good at is you cannot use generative AI as a search engine. Although, of course, things are changing and now they are trying to combine the two things. But natively speaking, generative AI has not been built to search for truth. Okay? That doesn't do that. That's why it hallucinates. Hallucinations are this phenomenon when the AI makes stuff up. And why is that? Because it can shut up. If you ask a question, there's always an answer. Even if you ask a stupid question, it always comes with an answer. It's a slave to our question. So that's why it doesn't think, right? But never exactly the same. If you ask the same question multiple times, it changes a little bit. Why? Because it's statistic. So words are combined differently. Now, you can even tune that ability in some tools like ChatGPT. You have something called temperature. So you can make it crazier or more. You can make it crazier. Or crazier is good sometimes because you need variety, right? But when you want more conservative answers, you need to lower the temperature. So the noise that you introduce in the algorithm is something you can tune. Probably have you heard this story? This lawyer, it was all over the news, so probably at least in the US. So this was a lawyer that used generative AI to help him with the court case. So he basically, there's a lot of work if you're a lawyer, a lot of stuff you have to read, you have to write, a lot of stuff you have to cite, especially in the United States, it's case-based law. So in that previous case, you have to cite everything, right? So use ChatGPT to do that. And it was great because he created this beautiful document with all the citation, all the case properly formed and structured. And then he filed it. But ChatGPT hallucinated and made up a lot of stuff. Especially, it's for instance, one thing you don't want to use ChatGPT for is if you do literature review. He comes up with a beautiful literature review. Some of it is good, might be good. A lot of it might be just invented, including the reference. The whole reference is fake. It doesn't exist. Okay? So that's what happens here. So the references were made up. Someone found out, say, how come you have cited this case don't exist? And he confessed, I used a tool, and then he was fired and everything, So hallucination is when generative AI creates content that is wrong for multiple reasons. What other things you can expect on the negative side? Biases. If the content is biased, the output is going to be biased. The content is biased, quite likely it is, because if you use the internet, you know how much bad stuff is there. So I think I can give you an example in the demo that I have of a bias that I inadvertently generated. Because sometimes that's the tricky part. It's not immediately visible, but it's there. Safety and privacy. In the guidelines that we have approved for our university, there is one that says, do not input in ChatGPT or the likes any personal information, because if you do that, you put it in public domain, in other words. So it's not private anymore. Or whatever strategic information for your company, whatever is the thing that you don't want to distribute or share with the public. And safety has to do with the fact that, again, the answer is not 100% reliable. So if you're going to base your decision on that answer, you might produce unsafe results. And number 3, inconsistency. Like I said, it can generate different answers with the same question. And it's part of the design of the technique. So these discrepancies might arise. So, and this concludes my introduction. But again, just to make some points very clear. First of all, it's a computer. It doesn't think. It doesn't reason. Number 2, probably heard this in the jargon of computer coders, garbage in, garbage out. It feeds on data. If the data is bad, the output is bad. As simple as that. Number 3, and this is my favorite, generative AI can create plausible content. But plausible doesn't mean true or doesn't mean accurate. Quite likely it's not. And number 3, this is probably this is my favorite, my most favorite, is unreliable by design. Now, for me, this is, if we know it, is a point of strength. Because for what we have to do, we are in the space of entrepreneurship. So we are in the space of innovation. We are in the space of creativity. We need to be creative, right? So having something that deviates from the norm can help sometime to nurture our creative process. So the fact that it's not reliable, when it's creativity, it doesn't make any sense. So there are 2 things. One is to create something, and one is to predict something. When you predict something, it's something that already exists, it's there, right? That's what prediction is. But if it's creative, you can't predict anything because it's a new thing. What are you going to predict? Like, is this product going to be successful? Nobody really knows, right? Or what are the sales for this product next quarter? That you can predict because the product is existing. Generative AI is not good for prediction, right? And this is something that a colleague of mine came up with. I like it. He said, AI stands for amplifier of intelligence. So basically, if you have intelligence, meaning your intelligence, the output is a different form of intelligence, perhaps a little bit augmented, perhaps a little bit, I think that's really more than augmented, is formatted in a different way. Expanded if you want. But if the intelligence is not there, you're not going to get out anything significant out of it. So when generative AI produces disappointing results, I like this from a blog that I follow, the problem might be you, not AI, okay? So it's really the competent user that we need. And this is the risk with using AI, generative AI for students. They might or might not be the competent user for that type of technology. So our work is really to help them to be competent user, not so much to forbid them from using it. And finally, it's good to understand why we are different from machines when it comes to creativity, right? There are a number of reasons. First of all, how we acquire information. We acquire information through the senses, through our nervous system, through our body. Machines acquire information through sensors and data structure. Okay, very different. Predict events. How do we predict events? We predict events using knowledge of the world that is physical in nature. It's called naive physics. If I throw something at you, you're going to be able to predict if this thing is going to hit you or going to hit you, the person next to you. You're going to be able to catch it. You know, when we play sport, for instance, we are very good at that. But we don't have equations in our mind to do the prediction, right? Instead, machines do. They have statistical models, rules extracted from data. When it comes to classify knowledge, we use experience and we learn from others. Our learning is mostly social. We learn from each other, right? Which is something that machines don't do well. They use pattern recognition primarily for that. And finally, how do we make decisions? A lot of our decision making is emotional in nature. That we like it or not, there's a lot of emotion. There's a lot of gut feeling. It's something called embodied cognition. It's a mix of brain and gut. Of course, machines don't do that because they don't have a gut. They only have mathematical fitness, and that's how they pick the best solution. What's the most likely word? The one with the highest probability, right? If I ask you, what's the most likely word? You're not going to compute any probability in a sentence. You're just going to say, oh, with this word, the sentence sounds better, feels better. All these sounds, feels are emotional categories, right? Based on experience, based on the moment, and based on other factors that are part of our biology. So this is important because this means that these elements of creativity is something that we have to add to whatever the machine generates. We can add this stuff. We can use the aesthetic dimension, the emotional dimension to judge competently what the machine does for us. So don't forget about it. We don't have to lose these skills. And this is a message that I give to my students all the time. Like, don't forget you have a body, okay? You have a body. It's a good thing to have a body. There's the sun outside. Our human cognition is physical in nature. It's biological in nature. You have to nurture that. Okay, so quickly, design thinking. Now, why I'm using design thinking? I'm using design thinking because I truly believe it's a good method. How many of you are familiar with design thinking? Great, I assume that. So I'm going to go fast on this. But why I'm using it in this context? Because again, if you want, remember the amplifier of intelligence thing? If you want to get good output, you need intelligence. What intelligence is some structure of knowledge that you have to possess already. You cannot delegate that to the machine. You have to know your stuff already. And then the machine can help you improve it or reframe it or recombine it. But if you don't have a framework, the machine is not going to give it to you. So my framework here is design thinking. It could be another one. Doesn't matter. I'm using that one. Never approach generative AI and tell this to your students as well. You told them already. You cannot approach generative AI as a clean slate. Your mind is already rich of content, of knowledge. You have to use it if you're going to get something out of it. So as you know, design thinking is based on all these phases with a lot of feedbacks. It's really a user-centered approach. It really gives priority to understanding the user first before we even think of a solution. It's heavily based on prototyping because the whole point is ideas are not enough. You have to embody this idea into a kind of an artifact that you want to test out with actual users, because in that way you can get much more feedback, much better feedback. Otherwise, you just talk. If you just talk, the quality of your feedback can be either poor or misleading. And so there's a lot of prototyping, there's a lot of testing, and of course, it's very non-linear. There's a lot of feedback. You go back a lot of time. In my class, I ask the students to go through this cycle at least twice. And of course, in one semester, you cannot do much more than that, I guess. But in reality, as you know, it's much more prolonged. And also, the other element is this, the alternating divergence and convergence in different phases. So why that is important for us in this context of generative AI, because generative AI is a technology that you can use for the divergence part. It can help you to diverge a little bit more, a little bit better, a little bit faster, okay? Convergence is not that good. Generative AI is not that good for convergence. Why do you think it's so? Or do you agree? Because when it comes to convergence, it's about validating. And validation is not something that it can do really well without your serious supervision. Whereas divergence, it's easier. Generative AI has been built to create content. Don't forget that. But it's not been built to predict the truth. Convergence is about making choices, which means you have to be informed, you have to be a good decision maker to eliminate some alternatives and focus on some others, right? That's the part in which generative AI is not great at, okay? And now, just a little commercial break. I've tried to combine design thinking with entrepreneurship in multiple ways, and this is my latest book. It's a manual written for non-academic people, for practitioners, but I think it could be used also in a class. And it's really the product of many years of trying to embed design thinking into entrepreneurship in the most organic possible way. Because these two elements, as you know, they have different origin. They don't always get combined. And sometimes they don't get combined the right way. So the book is all about this. And it's specifically good for if you teach a very entry-level class when students are at the very beginning of the process. So the code's not working? Okay. No, it was not AI, it was me. I'm the worst marketer ever. But thanks, it worked. Okay, that's mystery of technology. Human error is nice, it's always like appreciated. But anyway, it's on Amazon, so if you just Google it, you're gonna find it. So anyway, unfortunately there's no AI in this one because while we were writing it, AI came out, so very lucky in that. But on the other hand, I don't think it's a big deal because with the velocity with which these things are evolving, you've read a book today, you throw it away tomorrow because it's no longer updated. So this one, I think maybe will stand the test of time a little bit longer. Anyway, the only thing that is important for the rest is these phases, because what I'm going to do now, and this is more with this I've done with my introduction, I want to show you how to do some prompting to support each of these phases. So that's why it's important to remember them. So empathize, define, ideate. I think I have some example for definitely for the prototype and the ideate phase, and see what you can do with ChatGPT to accomplish that. Okay. So it's really about prompting. Prompting is the way we interact with generative AI. Never forget that generative AI bot is a conversational agent. It works better if you can have a conversation with it as opposed to just ask a question like we do with a search engine. With a search engine, what you put, Luca Iandoli, design your business, and then you find the link, right? That's it, finish. Here is more of an interaction, and you have to guide the interaction. Actually, I'm not an English native speaker, so for me, second language. So prompting, I knew what it was, but I looked for the definition. And it's interesting, the definition in the dictionary say, the action of saying something to persuade, encourage, or remind someone to say something. So basically, you have to tell generative AI what you want to be told. Okay? It's a little bit recursive. Like, you have to tell the machine what you want to be told. So never forget about this interaction. And it's really an art of conversation. Actually, we organized an event recently at my university. We invited some experts with AI, and there was a person from Google. And he said, for me, generative AI is just the main element of novelties. Like we said, the algorithm has been there for a long time. But the main element of novelty is the interaction part. It's a new interface. That's what it is. It's a new way of interacting with the computer that we were not using before. So I think that was very, very true. Anyway, sometimes you don't know. And you can ask ChatGPT to help you out. So I asked ChatGPT, what's the best way to interact with you? And he told me, what do you see there? He typically, as you know, creates this long list of, it's a good way to spot if the students are cheating because they do the same, like they copy and paste, you find all the bullet lists, but in this case, it's informative. So be specific. Open-ended question will produce open-ended results, not good. Context, that's the most important, I think. You have to provide the context, and I'll give you an example of what I mean with that in a minute. So the question in a particular context. You want to break down complex question if it's too long, and then why. The machine needs to know why you want to do what you want to do. This is also important. Specify the format. What do you want? Do you want a list? Do you want a graph? Do you want a picture? Do you want an Excel file? Do you want a PowerPoint? You name it. The more these tools get developed, the more the options in terms of the available formats. Unfortunately, the most sophisticated formats, you have to pay for it. The free versions do not offer much when it comes to the output part, but it's getting there. And then ask follow-up questions, because again, it's a conversation you want to refine, and it's also good for you to understand better what you're doing, right? So again, it's like to have a helper, a sous chef, by the way. You are in charge, not him. You are the cook. But the sous chef can give you idea. You can compare notes. You can have an exchange to improve what you're doing, right? So here's an example of a good prompt. That is good because I made it, right? So full disclosure, I used ChatGPT to design the workshop. Okay, so task. I have to design a 2-hour hands-on workshop to teach how to use generative AI to support entrepreneurial creativity. Context, that's the context part. I like to use design thinking framework and show that generative AI can help in all the steps, including the emphasize. I use emphasize because I mistyped. It should be empathize, and I use emphasize. I'm highlighting it because, as you will see, ChatGPT will propagate the mistake. We call it emphasize all the time. So again, garbage in, garbage out. The ideate step, the prototype step, the test step. As part of the context, I found it useful in a prompt to specify the type of people you're working for, or the target of your whatever you're doing. In this case, I just use participants will be given a design challenge. Might include entrepreneurs, teachers, policymakers, and consultants attending an international conference in entrepreneurship. So I give it a little bit of context. And you can be a little bit more nuanced, to be honest. You can be the more nuanced you are, the better, right? For instance, I could have used things like where these participants are coming from, age range or education background, whatever. And the format, provide a step-by-step description of the workshop in terms of learning objectives, phases, timelines, and activities. So in other words, what it's going to do? It's going to help you to do what you want to do, what you would do anyway. What's the advantage? It's much faster, right? And it's pretty good. Of course, let me show it to you. This is not what I want to show to you, but it's it's an interesting page, by the way. It's not this one. Sorry. Okay, so this is what I got. Workshop title, objectives, structure, plan. I'm not going to read it to you, but you see it's very detailed. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. I mean, then it's up to you to say if it's good or not, right? But you know, can I do this myself? Yes, of course. That's my job. I can do it. But it's going to take me maybe, 1 hour to do a first draft. And instead, I have a first draft in 1 minute, and then I can work on it to refine the draft, right? So it also goes into something that maybe I would not have considered the first round, at least, like AI tools, design challenge, resources, and a lot of other details. All right. Now, this is an example of a follow-up question. Okay, this is the workshop, but I want to give you a context. I want to give you more context, actually, because during the workshop, I plan to use a design challenge for my participants. Just an example. This is an example that I've been using in prototyping workshop before, artificial intelligence, so in a more traditional way. So I wanted to see the difference. And actually comes from an actual company with an actual problem like this. So it's a little bit small for you to read over there. I read it for you. Actually, I think I have it on the slide. Let me go back to the slide. Okay, so this is the challenge. You are consulting for a company that needs design advice for the development of a safer kitchen stovetop. A key problem they are struggling with is that while safety in a kitchen is so important, it does not sell. So in other words, safety is not sexy, it's not marketable to attract new customers. So how do we make safety interesting for the customers? So this is another thing that I learned using ChatGPT. It works better if you have trade-offs, like this. So you give a little bit of a dilemma. How much safer, how much aesthetically appealing? Like you want both, right? You cannot have both to the full extent. That's where the bot works better as opposed to just make one thing safer, right? Give him dilemmas. So now help me to generate some prompts for ChatGPT that participants could use in each phase to support the design of this product. And then I asked for at least 3 prompts. Now, let me stop talking for 5 minutes. Can you create, maybe you can write it down on your computer on a piece of paper. Can you create a prompt yourself on anything you want? That's not to be on the example. Using that list, that format, I can bring it back. I think it was this. Can you read it? It's too small over there, right? It's okay. Back of the room? Not so much? Okay, I can put it on the thing here. I can zoom in. Oh, no. Yeah. So be specific question, provide a little context, purpose, format, and we can stop here. And if you want, you can put it in a ChatGPT already if you have it in front of you. Okay? I'm going to give you 5 minutes to do this. It could be anything. It could be plan a trip, recipe. Yes.
The question is, when we use these these four sort of subsets of topic, and then when we get to the why of your doing it, where as a student it's like I need to answer this, or as an employee it's I need to do X. Where's the component of my actual motivation or the fact that I'm even really interested in it? Like if it's just a job and I got to get it done, then even how to generate what it is, the content is how do we work that into all of this? We're just trying to get it done, but also might just produce low quality work when it gets to the end user.
Yeah, I mean, the motivation has to be, it cannot be in the technique, it cannot be in the algorithm, it has to be in you or in wherever is your customer and wherever the demand is. So if the demand is, the stakes is high, of course you have an interest to be a little bit more. So let's assume that, there's an interest in the quality of the output. So the idea is if you prompt better, you're gonna get better output. So how do you prompt better? This is one way to do it. Make sure you check all these boxes when you ask for something. You got it? You did it? Okay. Do you want to share with everyone? You want to read it?
I write business administration freshman students orientation, and ChatGPT suggests all of the points and activities or I should include on that presentation. I did it before. I attend on June Faculty Research Network at NYU, and we have to show our peers the use of IA on the student engagement process. And I have another experience, an excellent experience, and I did an infography with IA help.
Thank you. And how important was the ability to prompt it, correct?
Yes, you have to write it down very specifically, and also you have to do the work. And the IA helps you to finish that work properly, but principle you are the author, right?
Absolutely. I like that. You are the author. Authorship cannot be delegated to a machine. Authorship implies responsibility. This is another thing we put in our guidelines for our students. If you are the author of something, you claim you are the author of something, for instance, when you write a paper on an essay, you are responsible for what you wrote. So I don't even care if you create it with AI, because you're responsible for what you wrote. If that thing was wrong or biased or whatever, you are responsible. Gloria, yeah.
To add on to that, I had a prompt here that I actually used, and I wanted to share it with the group. It's create an outline for a graduate level digital marketing 14-hour course. So what happened was that it gave me an outline, and then I said expand, and then it gave me content. And when I started reading, I found so many incoherent things. And then I had to go back. And the good thing was that it had already done the legwork of structuring the outline. But when you get to the gist of it, you need to proofread and you need to purify it and extract things that are garbage. And it's basically just giving you everything that's out there. So it's your responsibility to make it work and to refine it and to reference it properly, because you can ask for references, but it doesn't tell you where they go. So you need to make sure that you go and you read the references that you choose. And they might be fake. So the thing is that it does ease the way through, but it doesn't give you pure, validated information.
Absolutely, that's the way to use it. Yeah.
So Luenda Morales from the Metro Urban Business Center. I'm a tech girl, so my friend was like, "Why are you writing so much?" Because I have to. But it's like I gave the prompt, so I'm trying to help credit unions to increase their sales and loans. And I gave the prompt, so you're a business consultant for credit unions. Your target market is human resources, executive directors, manager. Right now, they are trying to increase sales in the loan department. Usually, their problem is that they do not have an onboarding process, and that's the thing I gather from my research. They think it's a problem of, they're not motivated enough, they are not this, they not, and then when I go in, they do not have an onboarding process. So that is like the part of our input as a human being and whatnot. So the problem is that they do not have an onboarding process for their team with the product knowledge and the training necessary to sell. Create me a first business assessment to validate if they are doing the correct onboarding process. And then obviously it gave me actually a great onboarding, like a great assessment. And then I can check if it makes sense with the things that I do know already about the credit unions and stuff like that. But it was great.
Thank you. What's your name? Luenda. So Luenda Glorima gave us two great examples. So what is they have in common is that, of course, you have to know already what you're looking for. But I would recommend, so that crafting the prompt, spending a lot of time in crafting the prompt is going to save you a lot of time in reviewing. Because again, the more detailed you are, the more nuanced you are, the better the outcome. So if you have too much of an open question, the answer is going to be open as well. And so in this case, a lot of context. There's a lot of onboarding, particular company, and so you have to write a lot because in this way it is going to save you some time. The other way to go around this, when you can, now some of these tools allow you to do that, but you need to have the data. So if you have, let's say you are a professor, and then you have been teaching this class for many years. You have a lot of materials. You have your slides. You have your papers. You can create your own agent. But you have to feed the machine with all this stuff. So, and the more the better. So the next time you're gonna ask, like, create an assignment for this class, for this, and that, the machine has your own knowledge base, as opposed to a generic assignment that everybody can do. So that's the other way to go around it. And again, you have to spend time to create this knowledge base. But once you have it, it's there, and you're gonna use it for a long time. So I think the investment definitely pays off. Great. So now let's go back to our prototyping ideation part. So empathize. This is prompting about to better understand our prospective customers and their problems. So again, this is the challenge. I'm just reporting here again. This trade-off between safety and aesthetic in the context of designing something that goes in your kitchen. So you can come up with a question yourself, or you can ask, to start with, you can ask ChatGPT to create the question for you. Suggest question we might ask to know our perspective or current customers better regarding their needs, issues they face when using the product, personas, etc. If you wish, copy the challenge and ask the question to ChatGPT. This was for you. So let me show you what I got. Okay, I'm not on the right window. Oops. Sorry about that. Okay, I don't know what's going on. I can't. Okay, there we go. So these are some prompts they generated for me. For instance, in the empathize phase, as you can see, use emphasize because it keeps perpetuating the mistake that I made. So you want to be careful about what you input. Now, these are good prompts, especially number 2, personas are this early identikit of your prospective customers. Create a few user persona representing different types of customers who might be interested in a safer kitchen stovetop, or creating an empathy map, which is really also a good way to visualize this finding. And then there are all the examples here. Let me show you the personas. Okay, persona number 1, the busy parent. Name, Sarah Johnson, age 35, occupation marketing manager, family, married with 2 young children. Background, Sarah is busy working mom who juggles her career with family responsibilities. She often cooks meals quickly, blah, blah, blah. Safety in the kitchen is top priority. Needs, frustration, goals. And then you have another one, the tech enthusiast. And then you have others. No, I only have 2. There are 4. Yeah, right. The elderly caregiver and the aesthetic designer. Okay, let's focus on the first one, the busy parent. I want to say 2 things. Number 1, do you see a bias there? Potentially, at least. The woman has to cook, right? I mean, it wasn't in my prompt. It wasn't there, but it just generated because, you know, it works on whatever data is out there. So there might be, especially in this case, it's important because it's personas, right? So it might be biased personas. Number 1. Number 2, of course, is this based on a market research or anything? No, right? So is it good though? Is it something that could be useful or not? It's very generic. You wouldn't use it, but what would you do with this? Anything like it's completely useless, or? It's a good start, but also I think it gives you, and of course you can work on it. I just asked one question to come up with, like, can you generate another 5? Can you generate another 5? And it comes with crazy portraits. But my point is, the cost of generating 5 at a time, or even 10 at a time, is so ridiculous because all you have to do is to hit a key, and then you might stumble into something. Oh, look at this. Maybe this is not necessarily an existing future customer, but is intriguing. Is the aesthetic designer is something I never thought of. Maybe there are people out there that might be our early adopters in that category. Of course, you will have to do your market research, you will have to do your validation of it. So it generates ideas. That's what it does.
I wonder if you added something like add demographic and psychographic information, like a more specific ask. What would that look like?
We can try, but it will generate demographics and psychographics. But the problem is always the same. For that persona, you can say, I've done that with the prototype part. Like you can pick one of those and say, like exactly that question. Like, can you give me more details about the demographics and psychographic for this particular personas? It's going to spit out stuff. Again, is it good? We don't know. Probably not, because it's made up. Now, with personas should be the object of the result of some kind of initial market study. Like, you don't invent personas unless you have experience already for the industry, for the particular market. But the point is, you might have that already, and you want to enlarge the scope. You want to think outside of the box. Now, can you do that on your own? Yes. Can you do it with a brainstorming session with your team? Yes. It's going to take 2 hours, 3 hours to generate exactly the same thing. Whereas with this, you can generate this way, and then you can have your team vet the ideas, which is a better use of your team time and your time, right? So yeah, you can change this, the structure here. You can now, of course, from the pedagogical point of view, let's say a student has never done a persona description. This helps, right? Because it gives them a way, an initial structure to think about. Of course, for a more expert user, this is not sufficient. But the point I wanted to make is, again, especially in this case, you need to do your, this is not a market research. Again, this tool is not searching the internet for existing personas like you would do with a search engine. It's recombining words in a way that sounds plausible, okay? So the busy mom sounds plausible because on the internet there's a lot of busy mom stories maybe, right? So that's why it picks the busy mom. Does the bot have any knowledge of the particular context? No, unless you give it, like with a good prompt, with the data, and you train an agent for that. Let me show you some other examples. So the empathy map, one thing you can do with these tools is to help you visualize information beyond the chat part. So some version might have that feature. Like empathy map is, what the users say, think, what they actually do, what they feel. So sometimes what they say is not what they do. Sometimes what they do is not what they feel, and all, this. That's why there's some overlap, but it's not total. So if you do that with this particular challenge, you have a lot of things that make sense. Now, again, are these things that your users actually say, do or feel? No, because they've been invented by the bot. But again, probably if you interview your users and you make a lot of interviews, you're going to find out a lot of this anyway. Now you can avoid that step, and you can start with this. And of course, there might be some that kind of resonate with your user that you want to dig into. So you're going to save yourself one step. That's the point. And then also you can have an idea of how to represent these things in a nice visual or in a way that is kind of compelling to aggregate information. And even if these are not things that users say, feel, or do, it might come out with something interesting in any of this bullet point that you had not necessarily thought about before. Okay? And again, it's a tool to explore and generate variety. That's what it does. I like the expression possibility engine as opposed to search engine. Generative AI is a possibility engine. What is possible is not necessarily true, right? Like in fiction. Ideate. Prompting a bot to support brainstorming, inspire, and favor insights. How about you give it a try? What would you ask a bot to help you with the ideate? Oh, sorry, that's a light in my face I couldn't see.
Thank you. My question is related to the empathy map. What if you tell the students, create an empathy map, the same question you did? They're going to come up with that response. What can we do as an academic educator to make a twist there? Because we already know what they're going to get.
So my answer to that, what I do at least, is I'm going to tell my student right away, the assignment is you have to generate an empathy map with ChatGPT. So it's not like you have to generate an empathy map, you have to generate an empathy map with ChatGPT. And I'm going to grade them on, not so much on the quality of the empathy map, but on how they prompt the bot, the question that they ask. And then I will add some moment in my class in which we discuss this empathy map together, because that's the other element of the grading. For me, it's not the output per se, but it's the ability of the student to criticize, comment, or elaborate on what the bot has created. I use something that is called the Turing test for the instructor. Are you familiar with the Turing test? Yes, no? Okay. So Alan Turing was a computer scientist who probably, British computer scientist, it was such a fundamental figure in computer science. He basically invented the first computer that we know of, and he was the one who really started artificial intelligence the way we know it today. Not technologically so much, because he was living, before World War II, so at that time the technology was not there. But then he said, when they asked, he said, how do we know if a machine is intelligent? And so he came up with the Turing test. The Turing test is, you put a machine and a person behind the wall, and another person on the other side of the wall, and this person is conversating with either the machine or the other person behind the wall. If this person on this side of the wall is unable to distinguish the output of the machine versus the output of the human, the machine is intelligent. Now, that was a brilliant test, because he skipped entirely the question of what is intelligence, what it means to be intelligent, how you can be intelligent. It is intelligent if it looks like it is, which is tricky. Now, back to instructor. I do the instructor test, which is, give your assignment to ChatGPT the way it is now. If you get a good answer from ChatGPT, like any of your students would, right, with that assignment, you have to change the assignment. Yeah, because, if we don't do that, we have... The other one better. Maybe it was... Is it good? Yes. If we don't do that, that's exactly... First of all, students are going to use it to cheat. But more importantly, we are training our students to do something that the machine can do equally well. They're going to be unemployed, right? Because they're going to pass the Turing test. So we need to augment our assignment using AI as the base. That's my recipe so far. I'm not saying it's the best or the unique, the only one. But I think, so my suggestion to you is add ChatGPT explicitly in the assignment and judge students and evaluate students on a number of things. I'll go back to this at the end of my presentation. There's a number of skills that surrounds the beginning, the before and the after of using generative AI. That's where your students add value. In the middle is really the machine. But what they put in is them. And how they curate the output is them. Now you have to grade them on that 2 moments, because the production of the content itself, let's make peace with it. We do it. I mean, why not? The machine does it well. It works. So what is going to make the difference? The quality of the prompt, of the input, the data, whatever, and the quality of the curation, the editing. Let me give you an example. I don't know if I answered your question. It was a little bit long, but... Right, but be careful, because images, this is good too. Although they have to pay, which is maybe a barrier. But other than that, let me show you the images part. Oh, ChatGPT already. I'll show it to you.
Yes, I know ChatGPT does, but it's the paid version.
Yeah.
There's a version of another AI.
Oh, yeah.
You get little pictures for free. Even they
Yeah.
do the presentation.
They do. Although with the free version, I don't know, you're talking about DALL-E or this one? There are many, but at this point. But the thing is, if you don't pay, what you get, I'll show you. Probably the example works better than the words. So I did the prototyping part, okay? So I use this kind of, with the prototype, and again, is the beginning of it. So you have an idea, you want to start to work at the transformation of this idea into some kind of prototype. So you need some high-level knowledge of like, give me some concepts, alternative concepts, that integrate safety and stylish design. Give me the feature. What are the features? What are the components? What are the technologies that you can use, that you should find in any of this? You can also push a little bit towards how the interaction part with the user and the prototype. So how the user will interact with it. So I asked ChatGPT this question. He gave me this. Sorry. Why this happen? I don't understand. I only had two apps open. Okay, finally. All right. So these are the personas, very much the same way. Oh, before I go to that, this is another way you can use it. It's good at that. Analogy. It's very good at creating analogies. So the question here was, can you provide examples of other products that have successfully combined safety and aesthetics? Because we know a lot of innovation you can just borrow from other fields. You don't have to invent it. So that's pretty good. And actually, I double-checked these products do exist. They are real. And so it does a great job. Like, it comes up with Dyson air purifiers, and it tells you features, lessons, the Nest Protect, the simple human sensor trash can. I didn't know about this one. This is a trash can that you can apparently talk to. I don't know if you're interested, but the ironing board, this is an Italian brand I didn't even know. Anyway, and then he comes up with this, like what we can learn. You know, kind of high level, but still good. Blend, form, and function, user-centric design, high-quality materials, customization. Maybe you already know these things, but there are things that you hadn't thought about it. Again, so use analogy like what if, as if, you know, because that's where it works really well. Analogy is one of the engine of creativity, by the way. We are creative by analogy in a lot of times. It's like when I do this, and then I do something in another context, right? Now back to the image, I asked to prototype. Okay, he gave me, I think, 5 concepts. One is called the Smart Safety Stovetop. And then he gives me description, key features, materials. Then he gave me the Elegant Induction Stovetop. And then he gave me the Eco-Friendly Gas Stovetop. And then he gave me the Retro Chic Stovetop. And then he gave me the Modular Stovetop System. And I think it stopped here. For each of this, it gives you a high-level description, some key features, some materials. And then I ask, this is something you can do with the paid version of ChatGPT. Can you generate an image to visualize the Elegant Induction Stovetop? Now, I did it, the first one I did it was with the free version. As you can see, it's really bad. Then I decided, okay, I have to pay if I want to get something. So I paid. And then before that, I decided, I insisted with the free version. Say, can you redraw this by adding some 50s aesthetic, such as some SMEG products like the iconic refrigerator. So I don't know if you know this SMEG product. This is an Italian thing, but they are kind of known internationally. So have you ever seen this? So they're pretty expensive, refrigerator and others. So they have this very nice 50s look, rounded shape, very thick, the plastic, the colors. So the free version gives me that. This bluish is one of those colors that was popular in those years, like in the 50s, especially in the United States, kind of pop art. Now, this is what it does with the paid version. Now, honestly, it sucks. But, I mean, for me at least. But at least it's an improve. I mean, in terms of the image, it's a good image. I don't think it's a good. I did this on purpose because I knew that, you know, this elegant, stovetop, stylish, modernist thing was not a good fit with this aesthetic. So I said, yeah, I'm not sure I like it. Maybe the 50s aesthetic doesn't match the elegant induction stovetop prototype. What do you think? Is there an alternative style I should consider? And he gave me, oh yeah, you can do Scandinavian minimalism. You can do industrial chic. You can do modern luxury. You can do eco-friendly contemporary. And this is what it comes up with. Oh, much better, right? So I don't know about this one, to be honest. But this starts to look interesting, right? Induction, you know, induction are the ones without the flame. So it's safe because there's no flame. There's a lot of advantages, actually, especially if you have solar panels. Otherwise, your bill is going to go through the roof. But then, anyway, the good thing with the paid version is that, now go back to your question, they might generate good images anyway. But again, I think the approach should be the same. Like, okay, generate the image through ChatGPT. I'm not going to judge you on the image per se, but on the ability, your ability to improve it. Now, I tried myself, and that ChatGPT was not great. You have to do a lot of work. But what you can do, you open the image on the thing here. Okay, and then you can have a separate chart on how to improve the image. So for instance, you can add, can you add a blue light instead of this yellow light? Can you eliminate some control? Can you do this? Can you do that? There's also a little bit of a primitive editor you can use to highlight some elements, like can you take this away? So it eliminates for you. It doesn't always follow your instruction, to be honest. I had to try multiple times to get it the way I want it. But again, you know, you can evaluate your students on the chart instead of what did you ask? And even the creativity of the question itself. Like I asked this because I'm a little bit into design. I know, it's also one of my passions. So I know a little bit about furniture, a little bit about this different style languages. So the question itself was good. I mean, not because I made it, but because it shows some competency that you know. Something about styles, and the same, if your students have that competence or they go the extra mile to kind of, maybe they've done some research, okay, what are the styles that are around, so that we can ask ChatGPT a more focused question. So all of that process is a process they can document if you ask them to do so. Like, show me how you did it. And even better if you do that in the context of an interaction with the student, with a live presentation or whatever, because then you understand how much of the value was created by the student, how much of the value was created by the machine. But I think really the skill that they need is to be editors. I call this editorial creativity. Now, if you wrote a book or something in your life and you went to the publishing process, you know how important it is to have a good editor. It makes a difference. Doesn't matter. It's always you. It's always you. You're the author anyway. You have a good editor one time and a bad editor the other time. The book is different. The editor is the person who's going to look at it and say, oh, this doesn't sound good. And cross it out. Oh, why don't you add something here? Maybe even writes it for you, the good one. So that editorship is such an important skill, because in a world in which the machines will create a lot of stuff by themselves, one of the few spaces in which we can still claim to have a role is the editor role, right? I don't know, maybe one day this machine will be able to edit as well in a good way. But in the end, I think it's really a matter of human preference. So how can they really, what is good, especially in the context of aesthetic? It's so situational, right? It depends on the person, it depends on the culture, it depends on time. In the end, it's up to us to say if something's beautiful or not. And in that sense, we say the beauty is subjective, right? So if it's subjective, it's not something a machine can really reproduce. But how you get there, how you help students to become a good editor, they have to engage into editing assignment. Yes?
In the convergence and divergence diagram, if you ask the machine which one of these two are more aesthetically beautiful and most likely to sell, or if in the case of the work with the students to validate the editorial aspect of it, what would the machine say if we asked it which one of those two is more aesthetically beautiful and most likely to sell in a predictive, because you would want that in the business.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. That's a great question. So you can do that. And again, ChatGPT will answer, will give you an opinion because it's opinionated. It speaks. It likes to talk. So it doesn't matter. Whatever you ask, you're going to get an answer. But again, I always want to enforce this distinction between exploration and verification, between generating variety and validating. Validation is not a good tool. Whatever it comes up with might be or might not be true. It's going to tell you this model is better because blah, blah, blah. But is it predicting? No, because it can't. It can't predict. There's no way. So even for us, it's hard to predict. Go figure for a machine, something like this. So I wouldn't use it for that purpose. However, do you want to ask the question, why not? Because maybe in the answer that it gives you, there are some ideas you want to work at. But that's good. But you should not trust the answer. And you should not put that in a business plan, right? Because you want to do your own test with the real users, with different. But what is the advantage here? Before, let's say this, you have to, let's say you want to test very low fidelity prototype, mock-up level, different type of product concept. Now you can generate this product concept within a few minutes, literally, if you prompt the right way. And then you have like 10, and then you can test with real people and see how they feel about it. Before that, you had to do this the same way. However, you have to draw this thing yourself. And it takes a lot of time. And what's the added value, really, in the drawing of the concept? It's just work. If you have a machine that does the work for you, but then, again, that's the variety part, that's fine. Validation, no. Validation, you need to do your own experiment, your own test with the real people. Maybe there are tools that can improve that part as well, I'm not aware of, or there will be soon. Again, it's about combining predictive and what Armando yesterday, for those of you who were at that session, called it narrow and generative AI. The narrow AI is the one that is good for prediction because he relies on actual data. That AI would have a lot of actual user profiles, a lot of market data, a lot of real things inside. Unfortunately, that's expensive to make. That's very expensive to make. I don't think individuals can afford it, not even schools. Probably large companies can do that type of investment because they have a vested interest, of course. They know their customers. They have plenty of market surveys that they've done with their customers. They can do that. We can't really, individually at least. So I wouldn't use it. Long answer, but again, it gave me the opportunity to reiterate the difference between using this for exploration and using this for validation. So it's pretty powerful. What I want to use the rest of the time is to introduce, let me go back to the PowerPoint. All right. So one concept that I want to share with you is this idea of workflow. Oh, this is something I've tried in my class. Again, by embedding generative, in my class is a class called Creativity, Entrepreneurship, and Innovation. It's an entry-level class, the first of the minor for undergraduate students with no requirements any. So anybody can take it. And it's really a class that introduces them to the very first step of transforming an idea into a business concept. actually not even a business concept, a product concept. We don't even go into the business model part. It is really about from the idea to the product, because they have other classes they can do that, right? So of course there's a lot of design thinking, a lot of prototyping and things like that. Now, this time I asked them to use in one particular workshop we did this way, this kind of workflow in which they had to do something, the same type of challenge that we have seen, for their own project, however. So there are different steps and different tools. Now, what you can notice here, a couple of things. Number one, the workflow should be a combination of online and offline steps, for two reasons. Number one reason is that, of course, you need human discussion and validation, especially if it's a team project. They need to work together. They cannot just delegate to the machine. And then they have to discuss. And again, instead of brainstorming from scratch, they can already brainstorm on something that the machine has created for them. That gives them a starting point. And you know, it's frustrating for students, especially very young, inexperienced students, to start brainstorming about something they don't know much about. They are paralyzed, they have analysis paralysis. You get them started in this way, it's also kind of engaging because they can get some of ideas to work with from the machine. This is the reason, number one reason. Number two reason is something that this is my experience, but also I found in one of these blogs that I'm reading. I don't know if have you been working with this thing for an extended amount of time? Like, have you ever been used ChatGPT, working with ChatGPT for 2-3 hours and more? Engaging, like really doing something. Now, if you do that, you done it? How did you feel?
Well, I actually go back and forth between different platforms. So I'll generate something maybe on ChatGPT, and then I go to Grammarly, or I go to Midjourney, and I just go back and forth on the platforms. But I sometimes have spent like 5 hours doing that, writing. I have it on my phone and on my laptop open at all times too. Yeah. So I think I'm an avid user.
You know, I don't know, I found my experience a little bit draining when you are completely virtual and you are completely absorbed by this interaction. At some point, I don't know, my brain at least, maybe the way it works, but I think having some moments in which, in a planned way, you disconnect and go back to the real world, and then you go back to the virtual world, and then you go back to the real world, is a good combination. And also helps the students to not lose, especially when it comes to things like prototyping. They still have to have a sense of what they are making. The physical component, the actual act of making stuff is still physical. It cannot be completely virtualized. Virtualization gives you a lot of options, a lot of ideas, but in the end, you truly understand and you build something when you do with your hands. So even if it's just paper and tape, it doesn't matter. So they need to alternate that type of moments. And I think there's also a message for them in terms of you have to nurture other skills, not just the ability to prompt a bot. You have to still be able to talk about this with your team members. You still need to be able to understand also in a more emotional, human way if that thing makes sense to a human user, right? But to your point, it's really a collection of tools. You know, when I use just ChatGPT, there might be alternatives, first of all. ChatGPT is just one of the many. You have Gemini, you have Copilot. But then, let's say you're doing a website, of course, you can use ChatGPT to generate the code for the website, and then you use HTML, and then you build your website, you do some wireframing. Again, the editing part, I think, is mostly something that you want to do offline. And then, of course, you have image generation with the many tools that are available. But anyway, the point of this is just an example, is that, you know, when you start using these tools, you want to put together a little bit of a workflow so that you can repeat this in the future. So you not improvise every time. And my suggestion is, number one, use a variety of tools. Number two, alternate offline and online. And number three, alternate individual with teamwork while you do this. Creativity in general is a combination of material interaction, social interaction, and ideation. It's these three things. You eliminate one of this, it doesn't work. Ideation is more virtual, but the other two, you have to be in the real world to do it well. And there's so many ideas that we can get out of that. So back to the question. So what about our students? What is left for them? What is left for us, right? So I've created this little workflow here, which is very generic. Is for any kind of problem-solving type of activity if you want. So you ask question, you articulate the question, you express the idea into some kind of artifact, and then you question, improve, edit, and revise the idea. Now, with AI, there's a little bit of division of work here, because some of these activities are intrinsically or better done by humans, and some of these are better done by a machine. So there's a collaboration in place. But again, it's a hierarchical collaboration. You are in charge. It's not your peer. It's your sous chef. More specifically, what are the skills? And this is something you can use to grade your students maybe in a different way. So the problem is not generating questions, but generating good questions. Right? Good questions at the beginning of everything. Everybody's good with an answer. Only genius can come with good questions. This was Oscar Wilde said that. So, good questions. Requires divergent thinking, requires imagination, requires knowledge of your domain. Because again, if you want to talk about style, you need to know something about style and kitchen design, right? So you can assess them on the quality of the question. Of course, there is some proficiency with the tools itself, that they can show it to you while they're using maybe in front of you. That's kind of obvious. The most important part, I think, is this one. And I think there are 3 areas of skills and competencies here for the curation part. So the machine has generated something for you. Now you have to question that output. You have to improve it. You have to revise. You have to edit. And this happens through 3 type of skills. Understanding the context, the fit with the context really, the ability to make the prototype, and the social intelligence. And I'll be a little bit more specific with the next slide. So understanding the context means really to understand if this thing works in the context of your users or your application, whatever it is. This means things like empathy is good for the users. It's what they want. Ethics is a fair thing to do, is the right thing to do. Machines, of course, can tell. Critical thinking, right? We have to question this thing, we have to improve this thing. We cannot just rest at the first iteration. System thinking, we've been talking today in the session with Aileen and Glorimar. And system thinking is how this fits in the broader, how this stovetop fits in the broader life of a person who's using it, right? Or maybe regulation, because, I don't know, for instance, in New York, new buildings that cannot use gas stovetop anymore. Has been banned, the new building. Because they are unsafe, because they want to save, reduce emission and stuff like that. So there's also regulation element. And non-cultural agility. This is more important in a more diverse world, in a more diverse society. People from different cultures cook in different ways. Right? They have different cooking needs. Are you able to understand? Machine cannot really understand unless you prompt it to understand it. Right? Otherwise, you have to have sensitivity. Oh, maybe this, you'd be surprised. Sometimes you do something is offensive to a particular group. Like in a certain religion, maybe you don't do certain things, right, when you cook. It's very common. Food and religion have a lot of connection. So just an example. Social intelligence. This is really the big part of it. Collaborating, negotiating, solving conflict, leadership, entrepreneurship. This is the part that machines cannot. This is the part where humans mobilize other humans through leadership, through entrepreneurship, through negotiation, whatever it is. Machine cannot lead a team. A machine cannot mediate conflict. A machine cannot persuade someone to buy something or to invest into something. Now, these skills are fundamental. It's a combination of communication and other skills, right? So that's where we have to train our students, because, again, a lot of that is in the middle will increasingly be delegated to machines. And what is before and after that is what, as humans, we can improve and perform and get jobs for. So conversely, and I know a lot of students, and maybe, even us, if the stakes are not high, we can just use it just to get the job done. You don't do that, you get uninventive ideas, boring stories, poor articulation leading to mediocre expression. If you don't give the bot enough input, what you get is a very bad image, for instance, of the prototype. It's very poor, very kind of flat, blunt, disappointing. So, and more importantly, it's something that is unchecked, unvetted, inaccurate, possibly false and biased, right? So all these bad things. All right, so I think we have a little bit of time. I want to hear from you. Share things you do with generative AI, or any question about what I said. Just have a little bit of a discussion. I don't want to talk all the time. I think you have a lot to offer to each other. Yeah.
First of all, thank you so much for the workshop and for the info. Super valuable and super awesome, everything you said. My name is Fabian Velez. I work in nonprofits and in marketing agencies, founder of both. So I want to ask specifically, have you seen any concrete differences between different language models, like for instance, Claude versus Llama versus ChatGPT versus Gemini? Have you seen that either of them have specific specialties or are better in specific areas?
Personally, not really, but I have to confess that I haven't done an exhaustive and systematic comparison, like, like it should be done, like if you want to do research on these things and make an assessment. Although there are plenty of websites and people who do that. In my experience, I haven't find big differences between at least the main ones, the most. Although I've heard great things about Claude recently. The other problem of assessing this thing is that they change at the speed of light, so whatever was true maybe 1 month ago is no longer, especially with Claude, which I haven't tested. I read this article and this review, and it showed also a graph in which basically in a few months they had been able to improve it so much to outperform not just the previous version, but also other tools that are on the market. I guess it depends probably, first of all, of course, paid versus unpaid makes a big difference. And number two, it's probably the type of task you're using it for. So maybe you will, this is my guess, if you do an assessment, you will end up with some sort of conclusion in which there's not a best one, but this is best for this is best for that. I don't know, Claude is better for speculating versus ChatGPT is better for comparison versus, so very high level general linguistic task. I think that would be the perspective I would follow if I should do a paper on this. But yeah, it's definitely a good question. But unfortunately, I don't have the answer.
Well, I can at least comment. I use a lot of generative AI, and I've used both Claude and ChatGPT, and it's an arms race. Last month, I was more satisfied with ChatGPT. This month, it's Claude, because they continually update. And I would recommend. I mean, I'm particularly impressed with Claude Sonnet 3.5. It really seems like I'm talking to someone who gets me more than ChatGPT, if that can be commented that way. So I think things change. And about your comment about real world information, this happened to me about 2 days ago. I saw someone who I'd worked with 10 years ago. I couldn't remember their name, and they were coming at me. And I asked ChatGPT 4.0, and the reason why I asked ChatGPT, because it is connected to the internet, and I asked the name of the person who I worked with 10 years ago, and it gave me the name of the person. So that was 3 days ago, personal experience. So
That's interesting. How did you did you how did you like did you provide a picture or well, what was the in the
I
prompt?
just told them, give me the name of this person at this job at this
Ah,
place.
okay.
It was a prompt, I don't know, 2 sentences maybe?
Ah,
And they
okay.
gave me the name of the person and the person who occupied his position before him,
Wow.
just in case.
Wow.
And the funny thing is that, again, the point that you make about you have to have knowledge, because that's the only way you can vet what it's telling you. Because what I found is it gives me bad answers because I've given it bad questions. And sometimes I would read something and I say, God, this doesn't really make sense. And I'm mad at the algorithm. No, you should be mad at yourself, because when I read what I had written, I said, this is why it told me this in this way. So again, I know it hallucinates and it may give you bad advice, but when you compare it with another human being, I'm not sure. I mean, people give a lot of bad advice out there. So
That's true. I mean, that's true.
it is a useful tool.
By the way, your comment made me think of something else that I took note from another session yesterday. I think it was the session with, I'm sorry, I don't remember his name, the gentleman from Google. Probably some of you attended. So he says something that really resonated with me when he said, we have to behave with generative AI like musicians when they create some new music, because you have the music in your head, but then you need to get it out. You need to listen to it, and only when you listen to it outside of your head, it might sound good or not. So one function that I think is important with these tools is to get the music out of your head and out in the world. And even if it's just for you, like you said, you wrote something, then you realize, okay, it doesn't look good. But if you had not externalized that thinking, you probably would have still, be stuck with your initial version of it. But then when you articulate it, and when it re-articulates it for you, you have a better sense of it, if it's good or not. So this, even just, again, the sous chef type of, it's like the sous chef is telling you something like, you really want to do this recipe, right? Like these ingredients don't really go well together, something like that. So thanks for reminding me of that.
I have a question. As these tools, there are advancements, right? Do you think that creativity in a way could ever be affected? Do you think that we will eventually become way too reliant, or we will depend too much on these tools, looking, way into the future?
Yeah, I think so. We will be more reliant. I mean, we've seen this already with the previous innovation waves. Now, how can we say that we are not relying or independent from the internet or computer? And when it comes to creativity, creativity is strongly based. There's one side of creativity that people kind of downplay, because in the common sense, creativity is still the stereotype of the imaginative. Creativity is confused with imagination a lot, but it's not the same thing. Imagination is part of it, but it's not creativity. A lot of creativity actually happens because we recombine things. So if we are exposed to certain input, that input stays in our brains, in the back yard maybe of our brain. And at some point we recall it and we connect it with new stuff. So what's the opportunity there is that with these tools we can have more variety. But honestly, when it comes to technology that is adopted at such a massive scale, we've seen that with internet. Then in the end, you have also convergence toward a limited number of solutions. Think, for instance, of the structure of a website right now, or think of the e-commerce part of a website. They are all the same now, and they have been the same for the last, 10 years. Nobody has changed it. Of course, it works. Why would you? But it's also like, this is how everybody does it. So what I'm trying to say is that there's a little bit of a paradox here. As we generate variety, but the same variety feeds back into the system, you might end up suppressing variety. Not because a dictator imposes that, but because just of the mechanic of the system. you know? So we might kind of delegate too much to the format that are already existing. I mean, I don't know if any of you has used like any Adobe tool, like maybe you haven't if you're not in graphic design, but you know, now Adobe Suite has a lot of artificial intelligence embedded into it. So you can say, let's say you have to do an invitation card for a birthday party. It comes already with a template, and then you can tell, oh, can you make this like, I don't know, you give it a style, like punk style, like I want to look like 80s punk music, rock, like you give it some kind of style, and then it does it for you. But what it does, it use patterns that are there. So other people are gonna have with the same, gonna have the same question and the same need, will generate something very similar. You know what I mean? So because it's so convenient to generate variety in this way, there's less active production of variety. If there's less active production of variety, you have less variety. So artists are the ones who do that. I don't think it's a coincidence that with digital technology, the importance of art in human history and civilization has been declining. I don't know, just my guess. Because before that, the only way you could visualize stuff was through the artist's eye, right? And whatever was reflected into architecture or religion or the Catholic Church. We have Renaissance in Italy because the Catholic Church used work of art as propaganda tools, right? That was the only way you could visualize things back then. Now we have so many ways, but at the same time we have a lot of forces that are reducing the variety. So I have some concern. By the way, that's an active area of research of, you know, how using this emerging research on investigating how using this tool improves or not the creativity of the users. It's interesting. I want to look into it. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Annie from Puerto Rico here, and this is more from the ethic part of using AI. Should a business consultant or should a business or should a client inquire or be disclosed, the business consultant, that they are using any kind of AI when they are doing a work for hire, for example?
My opinion is yes. Wow, this is much stronger. Yeah, for instance, again, using as an example the guidelines we have just approved for our students in our academic community, disclosure is an obligation. So if you use AI in whatever is the job you do as a student, as a professor, you have to disclose it and you have to say how you used it. Not disclosing it, especially for students, might be considered cheating. And I think if we ask this to students, we have to ask this to ourselves as professionals. I think it's just fair. I remember I'm an avid reader of National Geographic. I like their photography and everything. At some point, they started, and they still kind of do it, but at some point they decided, okay, when, and this was back in the day when, you know, Photoshop and the digital photography was coming out. With digital photography, you can do a lot of editing to a picture, right? So they started to disclose this picture has been edited for these purposes in this way. I think that's what we have to do. We should. And maybe a little note, say the disclaimer, like it's also good in case you have used anything that is not, you know, correct. At least you can share the responsibility with OpenAI if they sue you.
But continuing then through that line then, because you mentioned that AI, it goes for augmented intelligence, right?
Yeah.
Basically, is the intelligence before before the who's writing the prompt, right?
Yeah.
So again, going through that line, maybe should a person or consultant charge the same when using AI, or because it's going to lower their time of usage, but it's of course based on their experience that they can do, you know, more incisive questions and better prompts, but it will be a little bit faster.
I think the price, I would leave the price to the market. So if the customer is happy and is willing to pay the price, doesn't matter how you generate it. Like, I don't know, Louis Vuitton makes $20 bag and he sell it for $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 just because LV on it. People don't bother. They just buy it. Even if they know that the bag is not worth $3,000 for the materials or whatever. So, but on the macro level, I would assume that, of course, we have to consider that anytime you have a technology that increases productivity in an industry, like for instance in consultancy, you're going to have a decrease in cost. If the decrease in cost is shared and it goes across the board, the competition might shift toward a price-based because it's going to be easier. Anytime you remove barriers to entry, you go towards a perfect competition, right? A perfect competition is price equal marginal cost to the limit of if marginal cost is zero, price is zero, meaning it's free, right? That's why a lot of content is free today.
Thank you. I actually love that question because there's this ongoing debate for certain professions to continue to charge by the hour as opposed to for the results. So I think this will assist some of those professions that are taking longer to get there to actually start understanding the value of the results more so than the time spent doing it.
Absolutely, or charge for the expertise. Like for instance, the medical field is really there at risk for that. Because in a world in which you have diagnosis that is basically automated because machine can read whatever the MRI and give you exactly the diagnosis, and then you have some kind of structured protocol for the treatment. What do you need doctors for? Or why do you need to pay them so much? Maybe you just need a nurse. This is something that Christensen wrote in one of his latest books. He's called it The Innovator Prescription. He was anticipating this type of standardization where you go a business model that is based on expertise, you shift towards a commoditized activity because everything is standardizable and can be done at the scale that who owns the platform can do at that scale. So the cost is going to shrink. If the cost is going to shrink, it's going to be harder to ask for a higher margin. You still have to prove you're unique. That's my point. Like with a Louis Vuitton bag. For some reason, I don't have one. I'm not going to buy one. I don't even know if they would do one for men. But some people give value to that, and they're okay to pay the premium price. But going back to what I presented, like this stuff, there's a lot of value you can add anyway, even if the content is produced. But I understand your question because I guess you're feeling like, oh, if the customer knows that I've been using this, he's going to depreciate my value because he thinks mistakenly that, it's not my job, it's not my work.
Yeah, and on that same line, the customer is paying for your expertise. You're the expert. You're the one that will be held responsible for the result. By the way, you're liable, not the AI. So for that matter, since the focus is the result, the quality of your work is your reputation on the line, definitely. That's one of the many reasons, like when they talk about this, when it comes down to intellectual property, for example, and they talk about works of art, you have to look always at who's the person who is the creator. Even the expert who's using artificial intelligence, he or she needs to know how to write a prompt effectively to get an optimal result. So it's still the person behind the screen who's responsible.
Thank you. Anyone wants to share any maybe creative way you're using generative AI with your students? Maybe something different, novel, maybe an exercise or an assignment, something that you put together. That'd be good to share. Yeah.
In creative projects, this is not with student, but in a creative project, for example, we did a documentary where our sound in when you record in Puerto Rico at night, on the outside, you're gonna confront the cookies, which is our, frog from Puerto Rico. And it's a very loud sound, it's gotta speak up. So we start using AI to preserve the voice of the person who's the narrator, and it would completely work out and wipe out all the cookies or the frogs. And it would look perfectly as if they were not there. So that's one way to because we didn't want to get people lost into the sound of what the heck is that in the background, not to the narrator, which is our main focus. Was people to be focusing to the narrator of the story.
It's very creative. Thank you. And also very useful. Over there.
We had an exercise where after we got the answer from the different AI tools, we had the entrepreneurs retype what was generated so that we could make so the thought behind it was, hey, is it your billable hours of typing or is it your billable hours of thinking, so that we could make a differentiation between, oh, it would have taken me so long to build this. So we said, well, let's see how long it would take for you to type it, words per minute. And then as they went through it, it allowed them to think a little bit more about what they were reading because they were actually physically typing it out. And then they could start shifting that thought to, I'm getting paid for thinking as opposed for just typing.
Thank you. This is good too. I mean, I like it because it gives me an opportunity to say that, especially if you use this in training or teaching, it makes things a little bit more practical and engaging, as opposed, you can tell them like, you can have this benefit, productivity increases, but it's kind of passive. But if they prove it, they go through it, and the same, with this type of exercise, it makes the class or the training much more engaging and proactive on their end. Sorry? Oh, okay. Well, the pain is something you have to experience to understand it, right? So, all right. Thank you so much. It's been great fun to work with you. I hope this was useful.
Hi, before you go, please, we have our certificates here from Echar Palante, and you're going to have your generative and creativity workshop certificate. If anyone I didn't call right now, please see me at the desk. Joenda Morales Rosario. Can you have it? Okay. Jorge Luis Burgos. Jaime Vega. Seguro. Thank you. Samara Bigay. Adalberto Guerrido. Ana García. Denise Cobian. Wilma Miranda. Elise Dempsey. Sandra Argemi. David Santiago. Víctor Rivera. Luis H. Luis Rodríguez. José, sí. Tú eres el único Luis H. José Montañez. ¿Dónde está? ¿Se fue? Taylor Caseus. Taylor. José Luis Rivera. Villamañán. Alex Rodríguez. Se fue. Santiago Ramírez Ávila. Ani. Viviana Angulo. Daniel Vera. Francisco García, Alex Tai, Teresita Ibarra, Natalia Vigay, Mónica Ocasio, Fabián Vélez, Yaisa Colón, Carlos Fernando Villacreces, Juan Carlos Sosa, Doreen Abmash, Doreen, Ricky López, Elinia Piertenela, Eddie López, Jaime Jordan, Erika Smith, Carmen Elguero, Violeta Morán, perdón. Okay. All the ones that didn't have the certificate right now, please see me at my at the table, not my at the table, at my office. Gracias, muy buenas tardes, muchas gracias. Thank you.